She said it lightly, almost like she was talking to the wind, but her words struck him harder than anything life had ever thrown at him. It was late evening, the sky painted in fading gold, and they were standing on the small balcony of her apartment, the only place she claimed she could still breathe. She looked fragile, almost transparent, the way autumn leaves are just before they fall. And when she whispered, "This is my last birthday. I just want it to be quiet," he felt something inside him crack open, as if her soft voice had shattered a hidden truth he had been refusing to face. He stared at her profile, her hair swaying a little in the cool air, and in that moment he understood what fear truly meant. Not fear of death, but fear of losing the one person who had ever taught him how to live. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of showing up for someone when it matters most, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. He didn't respond immediately. She didn't notice. Perhaps she didn't expect him to respond at all. She was used to keeping her pain inward, wrapped like delicate paper no one was allowed to unfold. But he had already decided this would not be her last anything, not if he could help it, not if love still meant something in a world that often forgot how to care. A small, tired smile crossed her lips as she leaned on the balcony railing. She had always been like this, gentle, grateful for even the smallest things. But something in her expression told him the year had been heavier than she'd admitted. The treatments had drained her energy, the hospital visits had become routine, and the doctor's hesitant tones told the story she refused to accept. Her illness had become a shadow that followed her everywhere. He had watched her change, slowly at first, then all at once. He noticed when she suddenly needed to sit down while climbing the stairs, when her laughter became shorter, when her voice grew softer, as if conserving its strength. He noticed the days when she tried to hide her trembling hands, or when she didn't answer his calls because she didn't want him to hear how much pain she was in. But above everything, he noticed how her hope flickered, and what terrified him was that lately it flickered less often. Her birthday was in 3 weeks, 28, too young for someone to speak of a last birthday. He walked home that night with his thoughts spiraling, each step feeling heavier than the last. He tried to imagine a world without her, and failed. He tried to imagine her giving up, and felt his chest tighten painfully. He knew he had to do something, not to save her life, because that power wasn't his, but to remind her why she should still want to fight for it. His plan didn't begin with ideas of surprises or grand gestures. It began with small questions he asked himself. What made her smile before she got sick? What dreams did she pause because she was afraid of tiring herself? What memories did she wish she could relive just once more? He began collecting the answers without telling her. Over the next few days, he spent every spare moment preparing. He reached out to people she had grown distant from, not by choice, but because her illness had made her shrink into herself. A childhood friend she always spoke fondly of, a cousin she missed, an old teacher who once told her she'd change the world with her kindness. He didn't hide the seriousness of the situation when he contacted them. Some cried, some went silent, some asked how they could help.
He found the small bakery 3 towns over, the one she said had the best strawberry pie she had ever tasted. She hadn't visited in years, not since well before the first diagnosis. He drove there early one morning and spoke to the elderly couple who owned it, telling them how she described their pie as a slice of childhood. They packed an entire box for her, refusing to take payment. He also visited a field she once adored, a wildflower meadow where she took photos whenever she needed to reset her soul. But now it was winter-bound, the flowers asleep beneath the earth. Still, he took pictures of it, knowing she'd appreciate the gesture, even if the blooms were months away. The truth was, Everything he prepared carried a piece of her past, her dreams, her forgotten joys. He wasn't planning a party, he was planning a reminder of life. But there was one thing he didn't know how to prepare for: her growing silence. As the days passed, she became quieter, withdrawn, moving as though life was happening around her and not to her. One evening, when he stopped by, he found her sitting in the dark, her eyes glistening. She told him she had decided not to continue her treatments. His heart dropped. He asked her why, and she said she was tired of hoping, tired of fighting, tired of pretending she wasn't scared. She said she didn't want to spend whatever time she had left inside hospital walls. He wanted to argue, to convince her, to push her back into fighting mode. But when he looked at her, really looked at her, he saw exhaustion so deep it almost swallowed him. He held her gently instead, letting her cry into his chest. In that moment, he realized something. Instead of forcing her to fight for life, he needed to bring life back to her. The night before her birthday, he stayed awake preparing everything in her small living room. There were no balloons, no loud decorations. She hated that kind of thing. Instead, he created scenes from her memories. On the coffee table, he placed the strawberry pie. On the walls, he taped photos of places she loved. On her dining table, he arranged letters from everyone who cherished her, letters filled with stories about how she had touched their lives without even knowing it. There were messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years, each one reminding her that she mattered. But the most important thing wasn't the decorations, it was the way he planned the entire day. Not to celebrate a last birthday, but to make her believe there could be many more. The morning light broke softly through her curtains when she stepped into her living room. She stopped immediately, her breath catching in her throat. He stood waiting quietly, unsure how she would react. For a long moment she didn't move. Then she slowly walked around, touching each letter, tracing the edges of the photos, holding the still warm pie like it was something precious. Her shoulders trembled. He approached her carefully, afraid she might collapse or retreat. But instead, she turned and buried her face in his chest again. This time not out of fear, but out of gratitude so overwhelming she couldn't contain it. She whispered that she didn't deserve this. He whispered that she deserved more than she ever allowed herself to believe. He took her hand and told her the plan for the day. They would go to her favorite places, eat her favorite food, reconnect with people she missed, and relive moments she thought she'd lost forever. She looked uncertain at first, but the gentleness in his voice coaxed her forward. They began with a slow drive to the wildflower meadow. There were no flowers now, just the quiet beauty of winter. She stood there, breathing in the crisp air, seeing the hills she once photographed endlessly. She whispered that the silence of the field made her feel alive again. She even joked that maybe the flowers were resting because they knew she needed the peace for herself today. Next, they drove to the old bookstore she loved. The owner, a woman in her 70s, recognized her instantly and hugged her tightly. She pulled out a book she'd been saving for her, something she claimed had her name written all over it. She told her that she had prayed for her every night since hearing about her illness. The girl's eyes filled with tears at the thought that someone she barely saw anymore cared enough to do that. Later in the afternoon, she met the childhood friend she had lost touch with. They talked for hours in a tiny cafe, laughing over old memories, crying over things left unsaid, forgiving each other without needing to explain why they ever drifted apart. For the first time in months, color returned to her cheeks.
He watched all of it quietly, feeling a deep warmth inside him. Every smile she gave, every deep breath she took, every moment she forgot she was sick, it was worth all the sleepless nights he spent planning this day. As the sun began to set, he brought her to the hill overlooking the city, the place she once called her thinking spot. He had set up a small picnic with her favorite foods, wrapped in blankets to keep them warm. She sat beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder, watching the sky turn shades of amber and rose. It was then she whispered something that made his throat tighten. She said she didn't feel scared anymore, not of dying, but of living. She realized she wasn't tired of life. She was tired of living it alone while believing she was a burden. He told her she was never a burden, not even for a second. After the sunset, they returned to her apartment. She thought the day was over, but he had one last surprise. When she opened the door, she found a small group of people waiting, people who had been part of her life story, each one holding a candle. The room glowed with warm light, not overwhelming, not loud, just the kind of gentle warmth she always longed for. They sang softly, not a birthday song, but a song of hope, verses about healing, about strength, about choosing life even when life feels unfair. Tears streamed down her face, but for the first time in a long while, they weren't tears of fear or pain. They were tears of being seen. She blew out a single candle, not to mark the end of something, but the beginning of a new chapter. He stood behind her, hands gently on her shoulders, silently promising he wasn't going anywhere. Later that night, after everyone left and the apartment grew quiet, she sat beside him on the couch. She told him that she had made her decision. She would continue her treatments, not because she was suddenly strong or unafraid, but because today reminded her of something she had forgotten. She wasn't fighting alone. She whispered that he had given her something medicine couldn't, a reason to keep going. He held her tightly, tears burning his own eyes, because he knew the real gift wasn't the surprises or the letters or the places they visited. The real gift was hope. And hope, once reborn, was powerful enough to pull her back from the edge she thought she couldn't step away from. And as the clock neared midnight and her birthday came to a close, she looked at him with a softness he had never seen before. She said this birthday wasn't her last. She could feel it, and he believed her. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps more people receive stories of hope and kindness. Before you go, comment below. What is one moment of kindness you'll never forget?